Hi everyone, welcome to Moto Tribe. I'm Laura Kraft, and today we have with us Bill Roberson. He is a Forbes bike and car contributor. He's a writer, photographer, technology evangelist, also an avid motorcyclist, car enthusiast, chronicler of the ongoing evolution of mobility technologies.
That's right.
So, how long have you been writing for Forbes?
It's been a couple of years now.
It's been a couple of years. So you write on both cars and bikes. Do you have a favorite?
In between the two, yes,
Yeah.
motorcycles.
Motorcycles?
Yeah.
So I'm guessing you've ridden motorcycles for a long time.
Yes, I've been riding for longer than I'd like to admit. Well, let's just say several decades.
What has been some of your most favorite and least favorite bikes to test ride? Because with your job, I'm sure you get to test the latest and greatest.
I do, and hopefully we can take a couple look at a couple that I have in right now. But Laura, right now is really a great time in motorcycling. It would be it'd be very tough for me to say, well, this bike was terrible and I hated it and things like that. Motorcycles now are so good, really, from anybody that you get them from, as far as major manufacturers and even from some of the smaller ones. I really can't pick one that I didn't like. That's a really tough one as far as ones that I do like, and I'll have to think about that as ones that I didn't like. I really can't pick one out. Most of the ones that I don't like are like the ones that I own now because they're old. Uh-huh. and the new ones are just so good. One of the ones that I really fell in love with last year was the new Interceptor 650 from Royal Enfield, and it's a great bike. And I have it in for a long-term test, and I'll just spin this around, and you're folks can see it. There it is right there. Excuse my hand. But anyway, it's a retro style bike. It's based on a bike that Royal Enfield made back in the 1960s, which was also called an Interceptor. Now in the United States, it's called an INT 650 because Honda has the copyright on the word Interceptor. But it's basically known as an Interceptor anywhere you go. And it's a great bike. It's a parallel twin 650. It's really fun to ride. And what I tell people about it is it's basically like having a vintage bike that you don't have to work on. And I have had a lot of vintage bikes and they can be troublesome. But this is very nice, even though it looks very, very vintage. It has like a little panel here, and you've got your gas and other information, even the time and so forth. And very, very simple bike to ride, but really a lot of fun. And this really captured me last year. And so I'm doing a long-term review of it with help from Royal Enfield. And they're sending me some things with these very loud pipes on it back here. It has S&S pipes on it that are a little bit louder than stock, also lighter. And then some special mirrors with some branding on them and so forth. But that was one bike that I really, really liked from last year. I also rode Harley Davidson's classic Softail, which is a really, really great long distance bike. I like my long distance bike pretty simple, even though I have had more like full dress bikes in the past. I've kind of gotten past that. I started dual sport riding on road, off road a couple of years ago, a little longer than that actually. And that really kind of made me go back to the real simple kind of riding. And that's one thing I like about this Interceptor is that it is very simple. So I would say that's probably my favorite bike from most recently. Sorry about all that sun there. Let me turn it back around. And go ahead.
I'm curious, how many bikes do you have?
I personally own 5. Okay. Not more, and then I got married. And then kids came along and, you thin the herd a little bit. And I was just down to 2 for a long time. But now that my kid's a lot older, I've kind of started collecting again. And so 5 seems to be kind of a good number. It covers all the kinds of riding I like to do. And one of them is a scooter. So all you scooter fans out there, I'm with you. I love scooters. I started riding on a scooter. Scooters are so good today. You can tour on them. They're great in the city. And I love my scooter.
Yeah, a lot of fun. They are for sure underappreciated sometimes.
Definitely. I have kind of an unusual one. It's right here. This is called a Yamaha Morphos. It was made for a short time. It's about 8 feet long. It's a 250.
Okay.
And so it goes real good. It's a Yamaha. And it's really, really a lot of fun. And I've got some blue LEDs underneath it that light up at night. And it's really a fun scooter. Rides 2 real easily. Great fun. for getting around the city when I'm not on one of the regular motorcycles.
Yeah, I think you should show us what other bikes you have around there.
Okay, well, if you want. This is kind of the pride of the fleet here. Let me turn the camera back around. This is a 1999 Honda Cbr 1100 Rr Blackbird. This is one of the fastest motorcycles in the world at that time. It's still very, very fast. A beautiful bike. I fell in love with it when it came out, and it took a long time to get one. My cousin actually owned it before me, and when he decided to stop riding, he said, "Would you like to buy it?" And I said, "Sure." And that's how it got here, and that was a long time ago. And I still ride it to this day. A very, very wonderful bike, very, very comfortable, and very, very fast.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that bike. One of the Moto Tribe, Anna or Red Spade, her husband has that bike, and he's a diehard fan. He's a very tall guy, so that's a big bike, and he can fit on it.
And that's my situation. I'm a kind of a big guy, and I kind of tell people, well, it's kind of the big guy sport bike. You know, I mean, I love the Ducatis and I love the R1s and so forth like that, but I'm not comfortable on them. And on this bike, I am.
So what other bikes do you have around there?
Well, I have a couple in for review right now. If you want to take a look at those, you want to do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. Right now, I've got a really nice bike, two bikes here, and they're kind of on the opposite ends of the spectrum. On the left is the new Indian Chieftain Elite. It's a bagger. And this is a brand new, like literally brand new bike. I only have 50 miles on it, and that's how many miles are on it at all. And then right behind it is also the brand new Royal Enfield Meteor 350. And this is a very interesting bike to me, because I'll do something real quick, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Let me turn the camera around. But first, I'll sit on the Indian and see if I can do this. But the Indian is very roomy. You know, so I'm a big fella, so it's easy for me to ride this bike. And then you would think, and the Indian is 116 cubic inches. It's a big motorcycle, you know, big engine, very, very powerful. And this is the Meteor 350, so it's, as far as motor power goes, it's quite a bit smaller. But when I sit on this, it's nearly the same.
Really?
As far as size, posture, the way you ride it, the way you sit on it, and so forth like that. And so when Royal Enfield first said, "We'd like you to review the 350," I was like, "Are you kidding? I'm going to crush it." Not the case.
What about the weight? I bet there is a big weight difference between the two of them.
There is a big weight difference. The weight of the Meteor is about 420 pounds, which is, you know, fairly hefty for a 350, but it feels very, very solid, and the seat is low. So if you're not very tall, it's actually really easy to ride. Now, I'm big. I've got a 34-inch inseam, and I am very comfortable on this bike, much more than I expected to be. I'm as comfortable on this as I am on that.
Oh, wow.
And so if you're a beginning rider and you're looking for a bike that's, you know, very manageable, affordable, and comfortable, this I highly recommend. I haven't finished my review yet. It'll come out on Forbes here pretty soon.
That's neat. Yeah, at 350. I mean, I think that would be pretty manageable as a first bike in terms of power. You're not gonna wheelie or loop it.
No, you're not. And you know, and that's really an important distinction on these bikes, Laura, as you know, is that for beginners, riders, and even riders that are getting back into motorcycling after a long time away, this is really a manageable bike. You can ride it on the freeway. It will go freeway speeds. You're not going to be, you know, passing Corvettes with it or anything like that, but it will get it done. And if you do grab a big handful of throttle, it's not like you get launched into hyperspace. You know, it's very, very manageable, very easy to ride, and very, very comfortable, and not intimidating at all.
That's great. And then the Indian, I know it has a lot of technology.
Tons.
I mean, that's always what I hear from riders who buy Indian bikes is they love the technology, they love the smoothness of the bike, and, you know, all the luxuries that it comes with. Wow, the screen.
Yes, but here's the interesting thing
your phone just connected directly to the Indian, that it was
It did.
smart enough and it took over.
It did. It did. And that's, you know, a signature of the Indian is the great technology that's on board, and I won't turn it on again, but you have full GPS on the screen, you have music, you have complete phone ops. I have Bluetooth in my helmet. I know a lot of people do. I know you're a fan of the Cardo system, so am I. Really good stuff. But here's a really interesting thing, and let me go back over here to the Royal Enfield. So the Royal Enfield has this speedometer right here, and it just shows you the speed and your gas and everything. But then there's this little second instrument right here, and it's kind of blank. And let me see if I turn on the get the key out here. If I turn on the Enfield, and it will not sync with my phone, you'll see it says built with Google.
Oh, wow.
And what this system does here is it is basically a simplified system that's on the Indian. It uses Google Maps, and there is a Royal Enfield app, and you sign in, you tell it where you want to go, and it displays turn-by-turn direction on this little screen right here, which is really, really useful and really great technology on a bike like this. This bike is $4,500.
Wow. That is,
and it has this fantastic technology on it.
It's super handy when you're trying to navigate, so you can look at that screen.
Yeah, and you know, for those watching, I know a lot of people are putting their phones on their handlebars and so forth like that. And I've recently been injured in a crash, not on a motorcycle, and it didn't have anything to do with GPS or anything like that. But distraction is so key now, and I really want to encourage people to put their phones in their pockets, get them off your handlebars, because every time you don't look at the road ahead of you, you're really putting yourself in danger, especially on a motorcycle with its reduced protection. But it's not like a car. And systems like this, like the screen that's on the Indian, helps turn the distraction down. But this kind of a system here, where it's just an arrow, where it's just basically the barest amount of instruction to get where you're going, is really, to me, the best compromise between using your phone and not using your phone.
Distracted these days, and just keeping it as simple as possible while you're out there riding is the safest thing to do.
It absolutely is. And because of the notifications that come over our phones just constantly, as you know, it's not that you're just watching GPS on your phone. Someone sends you a text, someone sends you an email, someone sends you, something from Snapchat or from so many other apps that send us notifications now. There's just too much distraction from the phones. And unless you're just super hyper vigilant about turning those notifications off, it can really cause a problem. And I know most people aren't. I know I wasn't. I put my phone in my handlebars for a while, and it was terrifying. So I took it off.
You got to stay focused on the road.
You just absolutely have to. But this is really a great bike for beginners. I'm really, really happy with it and very surprised by it. And again, it's not a fast bike. It's not going to win any races. But if you really just want to get out and enjoy the ride and have fun, it's really great for that.
Yeah, I know that our audience, a lot of times they ask, what is the best beginner bike? And I think that would be a great option. But probably
it really is.
But yes, that one.
This is not so much for a beginner, after you've ridden for a couple of years. And if you're maybe a little bit bigger, although I've certainly seen lots of women ride big baggers, this is, a really great bike as well. And because the seat's nice and low, you can get your feet on the ground and have good stability. But yes, it does weigh a lot. It does.
Yeah. Well, switching gears a little bit, I know you've tested a lot of different bikes. You've also tested a lot of electric bikes. I'm really curious to hear your perspective on those, because you've written articles, and some of the titles that you have are "Can they go the distance?" So, does the electric motorcycle have enough battery juice to get you to where you need to go and off for a day in the mountains? And can you take an electric motorcycle off road? So I'm really curious your perspective on the electric motorcycles that you've ridden.
Well, I've ridden the off-road bike that I rode was the Zero DSR Black Forest, and then also their top of the line bike, the Zero SRS. And I'm trying to get some more electric bikes in this year. There's not a lot of them out there. I have not yet ridden the Harley Livewire. That may change this summer. I was just as I said, at the Harley Davidson event for the Pan America, and talking with their people. They said they were going to try to get me one. Anyway, having ridden those bikes, here's the deal. They're great motorcycles. They're really, really fun motorcycles. And it's a very different riding experience on an electric motorcycle. It's very smooth. It's very quiet. There's no gear changes. It's belt drive. Again, there's no exhaust. There's no engine noise, really. They whir a little bit. They make the faster you go, they make a little bit of a hum, I guess. And in the city, it's just unbeatable. I can't really even think of a better way to get around a city than on an electric motorcycle. Long distance, a little bit of a different story. As with electric cars, but even more so because of the small form factor of an electric motorcycle, the charging situation is more critical. And I took the Zero SRS on a route that I've done many times, kind of a test route around the upper part of Oregon, up through the coast and so forth like that. And normally I can complete that ride on a gas-powered motorcycle in about 5.5 hours. I did it on the SRS, stopping to charge as needed, and it took nearly 15 hours.
15 hours?
Yeah. And I did it because I wanted to see how long it would take with the infrastructure the way it is right now. And going forward, here's the thing with electric motorcycles and the electric EV movement overall. It's only going to get better. Battery capacities are going to increase. Charging times are going to decrease. Charging costs are going to decrease. The cost of the motorcycles is going to decrease because electric motorcycles and electric cars are basically going to follow the pattern of computers. They get cheaper as they get better. And we're going to see that, and we're already really seeing it. The next Harley Livewire that comes out is going to be less money than the one that's out right now, which is $30,000. The Zero motorcycles that are going to come out are going to be less money. And that sets up an interesting path for the future of electric motorcycles. I think in some ways, electric motorcycles are probably going to be adopted at a slower rate than the cars, because there is so much going on when you ride a motorcycle, especially a gas-powered motorcycle. All your faculties are involved, your hands, your feet, and everything like that. With an electric motorcycle, at least at present, it's twist and go, like a scooter, but they're not scooters. Let's make that very, very clear. The Zero SRS is monstrously fast, monstrously fast. If you put that in sport mode and get on the app and turn everything up to 11, it will crush just about anything on wheels. It is so, so fast. And this is the very, very early days of electric motorcycles. They're just going to get better. So eventually, yes, they're going to be great. Right now, you have to be an early adopter, and it takes patience. But it's really, really fun if you have that patience.
Yeah, I could see them being great bikes around the city where you don't fiddle with shifting gears and it's simple just to get around. And you're not, I guess, confined by how far the battery can take you. But I have actually ridden an electric motorcycle. I rode the Mission motorcycle, so this was a number of years ago. And it was a fast bike. And I remember that being my opinion, that it was very much like a high-powered scooter. And the torque, I mean, it was instantaneous. It was there. But I did miss that shifting, going through the gears and that experience. So I could see that being kind of one of the drawbacks.
Yeah, the motorcycles are very visceral, as you know. They're loud. They're unstable. They're fun. And to take away some of that character, I guess, is for some people, a deal breaker. And I totally get it. If I could have, any motorcycle that I wanted, I would probably have an electric motorcycle along with the ones that I have now. But it would not be my only bike because I like to go distance touring. And it's just not there yet. It will be eventually. I know that it will. But at the moment, and probably for the next few years, you really have to be disciplined. You really have to plan, and you have to be really, really patient at those charging stops. Bring some books. But it can be done, as I've demonstrated a couple of times. On the off-road, it was great. Fantastic bike. Very, very great handling. Really, really a polished machine off-road. And it handled gravel and dirt just fine. But, if you get stranded out in the middle of nowhere, it's not like somebody can bring you a battery. It's difficult. like you can get gas. Somebody can bring you a gas can, a little bit different to go charge up your bike that takes 8 hours to charge on a household outlet.
So I want to go back to something you mentioned about the electric motorcycles. You said taking your normal gas-powered motorcycle, it took you 5 hours and change to go a route, and then on an electric motorcycle, it took you 15 hours, and that included the charging. So how far could you ride that electric bike, and then how long did it take to charge every time you stopped?
Well, that was the thing. The maximum I was able to squeeze out of it, and I don't want to depart into too many stories here, but I was trying to go from a city called Longview, which is in Washington, to Astoria, which is up at the top of Oregon and is on the coast. And as I was getting close to Astoria, the meter was ticking down to the time I get to this enormous bridge, and this is on my story on Forbes. I don't know if you're going to link to it or not. But as I started going up the bridge, it was at zero. And fortunately, zero motorcycles have a little bit of reserve power in the battery where they'll keep going at a reduced speed, even though the range is at zero and the battery is at zero. So I was able to end up going, and it ran out of juice, where it basically gave me a message on the screen that says the battery is now depleted and the motorcycle dead stop. And I was 50 feet from the charger. So I had to just basically push it over to the charger and charge it up. And it went 110 miles on that charge. And it took 2.5 hours to charge it. And that was on what I would call a hot charger, a level 2 charger. And then when I got to a smaller town, Tillamook, I had plenty of power left, about 10%. And I charged it up. And that charger was not as fast. So it took 3 hours to charge it. But that's this kind of the situation we're in right now with charging infrastructure. The motorcycle can actually charge much, much faster than that, but you're at the mercy of what's available. And out in small little Oregon coastal towns, there's not much available. So you take what you can get. And that's where that big time delay came in.
Got it. That makes sense. So you absolutely need to bring a book.
Yeah, a book or some headphones or some downloads from Netflix or whatever you can do to pass the time.
It makes a lot of sense. So, circling back to Harley Davidson through a lot over the past few years, or at least you've written about them, and you've written about them saying that, Harley Davidson, it went from 92 million lost to scaling back bikes to revealing the Pan America. So they've done a lot in the past little bit. So I'm kind of curious, what is Harley Davidson up to rebranding? I mean, they are moving into the electric bike side of things, and they're moving into the off-roading. I'm just curious your perspective.
My perspective is this, and I wrote an article about Forbes with this because Harley Davidson has had some very tough quarters where they've taken some big losses. Like you said, they've scaled back their lineup and so forth like that. But at the same time they've been doing that, they have executed what I consider to be an enormous pivot in their business. Their core business still is their big cruiser bikes, and they're still very, very popular. But the audience and the ridership for those bikes is going down. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Some people say, well, the core group is aging out, or young people just aren't as interested and so forth. They're too expensive. And there's lots and lots of reasons that people have said that. And to some degree, most of those reasons are correct cumulatively. So what Harley Davidson has done is they've decided to branch out in two very, very important areas, one being the live wire electric motorcycle. And it's worth noting and worth applauding Harley Davidson, in my opinion, for doing that, because that was an enormously difficult project and an enormous risk for Harley, and it still is. And they were really the first legacy motorcycle manufacturer, before the Japanese, before the Italians, before the Germans, to field a full-on electric motorcycle, which was, for Harley Davidson, just went so against the grain. And it's a great bike. Again, I have not ridden it, but every review I read about it basically says this is a bike worth owning. It is expensive, but I think this is the halo bike, and I think the ones that are going to come after it are going to be less expensive. Now, at the same time, they were developing a new platform, which I call a new platform, called the Revolution Max, and that's their new engine, and that's the engine I just went and rode in the Pan America down in the Mojave Desert. And man, it is, I really have to hand it to them. They have really knocked it out of the park with this Pan America. I would buy one tomorrow if I had the money. And it's not terribly expensive as far as dual sports go. It's about 17,500 for the base model and 20,000 for what's called the special. And the special is just an enormously capable bike. That's what I was riding. This is a bike that you can ride really anywhere in the world. You can really take it wherever you want to go, and it's great in the dirt, and it's really, really good on the street. And Harley Davidson could have just slapped together something and put some knobbies on it and said, "Hey, a dual sport," but they didn't. They put enormous resources into this bike, a 150 horsepower engine, and which is outrageous for a Harley Davidson. Harleys have never made this kind of power. And it is really, really fun to ride. Even in the dirt, it's a big bike. It's a heavy bike. It's a little over 500 pounds. And you really got to kind of, really be on your toes, literally on your toes when you're riding it off in the dirt. But it gets it done, especially with some knobbies on it. I rode it with knobbies and without knobbies. And with knobbies on it, you can ride this thing anywhere. It was an amazing bike. And it got everything that you want. You got lights on it. It's got the aluminum cases. They even make a more streetable version of it with more streamlined cases. I mean, they've really thought of everything. And if you're a short rider, and this was really important, really a neat feature that I saw them demonstrate over and over again, it has automatic ride height adjustment. So when you sit on the bike, it actually sinks down. And then as you start going, it slowly comes back up. It's completely transparent. You don't even realize that it does it. And when you come to a stop, the bike then comes back down. So if you don't have a long inseam, you can get those feet on the ground. Whoop, there are the feet down there somewhere. But this was really, really good technology, and it has just everything that they've really thought it through. And I was really, really impressed with the bike. I'll have a full report on it probably this week out on adventurerider.com, and then another story more technically oriented on Forbes.com in the near future. But again, what a really tough project to undertake for a bike brand that's really just affiliated with cruisers and older technology and so forth like that. One of the things that Harley Davidson does that's really, really great is they hide their technology really, really well. And in the Pan America, they didn't do that. They brought it out in the open and they said, "This is what we can do." And man, they can do a lot. It was really, really impressive. Another thing that Harley Davidson has done that I think will help turn their fortunes around is they've gone into electric bicycles. And they're called Serial One. It's kind of a sub brand, and they're a little bit more expensive than some more of the mid-market bikes, but they're very, very high quality. I'm hoping to get one this summer to do a real long review. But what we have to remember about electric bicycles is, if you've ever ridden one and you've got the little thumb throttle and so forth, what are you riding? Small electric motorcycle, right?
Yep, you are.
You are. And that is a very, very key thing for Harley Davidson and any electric bike maker, especially coming from a motorcycle maker, is it gets people to think, wow, this is really nice to be able to go this fast without pedaling. If I could only go a little faster, if I could only go a little farther, that's where you sell them the motorcycle. So it's brilliant for Harley to do this. And the bikes are very, very nice. So hopefully they'll have success with all three of these new ventures, with the Pan America, the Livewire, and these electric bicycles, because I think they really complement their heritage line of air-cooled bikes and cruisers and tourers. And I think that's what Harley Davidson needs to do to kind of break out of its own fences, as it were, as a cruiser maker, is make these moves like the Pan America, like the Livewire, like the bicycles, to bring in those new riders and get them more familiar with the brand. It's a great brand. It's one of the greatest American brands, greatest world brands. And they've really done great stuff with it recently.
Yeah, it is quite impressive when you talk about that, having the bike with a little bit of electric motor on it, and getting people to get into riding. Because that is one thing about Harley Davidson, is that they're known for kind of their all inclusiveness. And I learned how to ride going to a Harley Davidson class. And so that's another smart thing that they did way back in the day.
Yes.
Creating those classes of, if you want people to buy motorcycles, they need to have a license, they need to know how to ride, and they just build out their whole class series.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a smart move. I hadn't thought about the bike in that framework. So it is really smart. So I give Harley Davidson a lot of credit. And when you were talking about the Pan America, and all the features and the technology, it doesn't sound like Harley Davidson. So that is also kind of a neat thing about it, is that they're
It really is. It really is. It's just such an achievement for them. And I got to spend some time with some of their more senior people and talk about it, and they just the struggle they went through. And like spent time with the lead engineer on the engine, and they had a cutaway engine where they showed all the internal parts, and it was just like, man, what a job they did in a relatively short time. And another thing to remember is this engine, the Revolution Max engine, it's just going to be in more bikes. It's not just going to be like in the Pan America. There are other bikes coming. There was one they showed called the Bronx. When talking to one of their senior people, he said, yes, we did show that, but we can't say anything about it because now we've kind of pulled it back and we don't comment on what's coming up next. But I guarantee you that's going to be in some other, not a Pan America. It's going to be in a street bike, and it's a magnificent engine, fast, tractable, 150 horsepower. I mean, it's a real rocket ship.
Yeah, that is exciting. I'm curious to see what Harley Davidson does next, because it's whatever I think of. I mean, nothing's unthinkable in that sense, because they could do anything.
Yes, it gives them a license to really explore other genres of motorcycling, especially. I didn't never think we'd see a capable dual sport from Harley Davidson. Show me what you can do next.
Right. And the dual sport, it does look like Harley Davidson, though. You know what I mean? The coloring, like it does still have that flavor of what the company branding is about. So I found that to be, pretty neat as well.
Yeah, they did a good job on the styling of it. Dual sports tend to be ugly, and that's fine. My dual sport is ugly. This was actually a pretty good looking bike, and they did, like you say, add some cues on from some of their bigger touring rigs. The front end, people have kind of criticized that and said, oh, it looks kind of ugly. But when you see how it works, especially the front end, because it has a very special headlight in it, when you see how that works, it's a headlight that looks around the corners when you turn. And when you have that built into the fairing, and it made a big difference when riding in the dark. I'm absolutely pleased with the way it worked. And yeah, it's, again, dual sports ain't the prettiest things in the world, but this is a good looking rig. It's got a lot of nice curves to it. It's got a lot of functionality to it, and it looks and rides great.
Yeah, and a lot of riders are gravitating to the dual sports, and I know that they're in my area. They're sold out in many ways. That's what everyone was buying, and that's another thing I want to talk about is the motorcycle industry in general. As we think back to 2019 and even before that, we saw kind of in at least what I know, is kind of a shrinking of ridership, and then all of a sudden 2020 hit. And you wrote a really great article, which I found fascinating. And so I'd love for you to share kind of what you found.
Well, just to recap the article, and I'll try to do it quickly. What happened is that the COVID hit, and then, as you know, everything just kind of went sour in March. The stock market went way down, and restaurants and theaters and everything closed, and everybody was burrowed down, hunkered down in their houses and everything like that. And then come summertime, and people kind of started to drift back to work, or a lot of people working from home, of course. But what suddenly happened was the phone started ringing at bike shops that were open, and at motorcycle dealerships that were open, and also just people that were selling stuff. And people didn't want to get in cars anymore. They didn't want to ride mass transportation anymore. They wanted to get around on their own. And what's the best way to be socially distanced and get around on your own? On a bicycle, on a motorcycle. Those are the two best ways to do it. That and walking. And that boosted both of those industries way beyond what anybody anticipated. I mean, these were companies that were just chewing their fingernails thinking they were just going to go swirling down the tubes, and all of a sudden the numbers just started to do this. It was kind of amazing, actually. And it has kind of given a big push to the motorcycle industry and also to the bicycle industry as well. Great ways to get around. What's the perfect machine? Is the motorcycle. It's a great book, and I'm sorry I'm blanking on the author's name right now. And it's a woman who wrote the book, and I really urge people to look it up. The Perfect Machine, about what makes a motorcycle such a great way to get around and a lot of fun. But people suddenly discovered this, like that motorcycle that was in the corner of their garage. Now it needed a tune-up, so shops were busy. And dealerships that didn't think they were ever going to see customers again were suddenly just having to unlock the doors. So it was a real interesting situation. and a real interesting market dynamic. And I'm just hoping that now that people have gotten a taste of that, and one more thing, I guess, is at the same time this was happening, the electric bicycle was just getting really popular. And so it was kind of a perfect storm of that technology plus demand plus the pandemic creating this circumstance for everybody to get out and get riding. It was amazing.
Right. Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. Do you think that this trend will continue? Like as
I
things
I,
get-
I really hope so. I really hope so. I think a lot of people, once they get a taste of riding their motorcycles or new motorcycles, or they got their old one out and they got their bike going again, and it's like, why do I need to take the train? Why do I need to take my car when I can do this? It's more fun. It's better for me. It costs less, and I don't really have to worry about being around other people who might be sick.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, all the reasons that you just said are exactly why I rode way more last year than I had in previous years because the pandemic shut things down. And another great aspect of the pandemic was the roads were not busy. And so you could ride around the streets or you could take adventurous roads to get to the mountain and not be held up by traffic.
I think in the article that you're referencing, I posted a photo, and it's kind of an amazing photo. I was out riding my dual sport. I had to go over and see my parents, and I was riding across the Burnside Bridge in Portland. And if you know Portland, you know that the Burnside Bridge bisects the city between north and south. And it was I don't know, like a Thursday, 10:30 in the morning. Normally it would be stop and go traffic, buses, bicycles, cars, everything. Not one vehicle on the bridge except me. And that picture's in the article. I stopped on the bridge, in the middle of the bridge, and took the photo. Had time to do it. Nobody there. It was like the apocalypse had descended. It was an amazing moment. And I hope we never see it again. Not that I like traffic,
Right.
but I hope we come out of this and are smarter and wiser about our health and treating viruses and things like that, and about how we get around. It's important.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think the future of how we get around is going to be changed by electric bikes, by electric bicycles, and hopefully by motorcycles too. So I guess I'm optimistic about the future of riding and ridership.
I certainly am, and I really do hope, like you say, that the push continues and that people don't go back to the old habits and so forth like that. For some people, you got to ride mass transit. That's just the way it is. But I think it's important for people to know there are options out there, and there are fun options out there, and there are inexpensive options out there. So, I really hope that this has opened some eyes and made people, get some fun back in their lives and how they get around, even if they're just going to work.
Yeah, I think so. I think that is the takeaway, and hopefully that's the takeaway into the future. I know in my area, in my community, I've seen ridership grow, and I don't think it's going back. Because again, I think that the people who do get out there and ride, they find their group and they find their tribe, and they really enjoy it. It's their social activity. And so I've seen in the mountains in the weekends it being packed, and 10 years ago it was not that way. So I think that there is visibly a difference in people who are out and about and riding. So I'm hoping that continues, and I think it just increased through the pandemic.
I sure hope so. I sure hope you're right, Laura. I really do. It's such a great activity. It's brought so much joy into my life. I think it's clearly brought so much joy into yours and so many other people. Motorcycling is a little bit like religion. I hesitate to call it a cult because it's really not that way. You can participate as much or as little as you want. But for people that are really into it, it's like religion, and it's a religion I'm happy to be a member of for all these decades. It brought so much wonderful joy and travel and things into my life. Oh, same for you, I would assume.
You nailed it on the head. I mean, that is exactly right. I mean, I think when you meet another rider, it's like you've never met a stranger. Once you learn that they ride, and so I think it does connect all of us.
Oh, I agree.
Other areas don't.
And how much fun is it to ride these? How much fun is it? It's so much fun to ride something like this. If this is your bag, this is available. If this is more your speed, great.
Yeah.
If you like the classic stuff, There are fantastic bikes out there, wonderful motorcycles out there that are so much fun, and they're so reliable. They're so much better than the old bikes used to be. And if you're into scooters, I'm with you. Let's go scoot. This thing is so much fun.
I bet.
Great way to get around.
I bet it is. Well, Bill, this has been fantastic. Is there anything else that we should cover that we haven't covered? I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, I'm sure we could talk all day, Laura, and I'm happy to, talk with you again on this subject anytime. I can't really think of anything right now. I just really encourage people to be safe. If you want to ride motorcycles, that's great. Get trained. It's not like riding a bicycle with an engine. There's a lot more to do. So please take an MSF class. Please wear the gear. I've got, my helmet collection over here for different kinds of riding. Lots of gear. This stuff can literally save your skin, save your brain. So really, really, if you decide you want to ride motorcycles, get trained, wear the gear, all the time. As how that goes.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much, Bill. This has been a blast.